Okay. Yeah, we are live. Ripping. Joey, good
Yo.
to see you. Are you you look like you're wearing a Helium in the Wild shirt. That's the same
Oh,
color,
you're
but it could be
close.
it could be the same color that I got because I liked it, which was the what was that, like the
The
Wild
rough
Rift or
chili
something?
bird.
Rough Chili Bird, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. What's going on, dude? It's been a hot minute. I've been gone in the UK. I just got back last night. Got 5 hours sleep and came up and been on calls ever since, which is why we're late today. My
Oh
bad.
boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, nothing major. We just announced a new sub network, so that's the
No
that's the
big
big
deal.
one. Yeah,
Okay.
no big deal.
And this was the Srcful thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is live and out there in discussion. It is now labeled as HIP 128.
Very cool.
So
Okay.
yeah, that chat is just pumping right now. I we set it up last night. I went to sleep, and now I got a bunch of back scroll to catch on. So,
That seems about right.
yep.
It's okay, cool, super cool. So we got at least one more sub DAO coming down the pipe after this, right? Or that's still
Uh, some
unnoted.
other things are kind of in early discussions. Like Noah on our team, when people are asking about this, he always likes to remind. It's like this is a BD thing, effectively. Like this could fail for somebody who doesn't like the color of your T-shirt, and business is over, right? Like you
Yep.
never know with this kind of stuff. So,
How could you not like
and,
this
and the same.
T-shirt, Joey? Come on.
Oh, I do like that T-shirt. That's why I'm on.
Can
So
you see the gold hawks there? Yeah, very
look at
fancy.
that.
Best swag in the industry.
Why don't I have one?
Well,
Uh,
I'll see if I can get you one. They're not cheap, these T-shirts. I'll tell you that.
I bet.
I'm always talking to Max, and he's like, "Hey, is it okay to get this?" I'm like, "Yeah, there's only two of us. Once there's three of us, we're gonna cut off all clothing purchases."
Yeah.
But okay.
Yeah. So there's actually sort of, you could maybe say there's two more in the works, but it's just so early at this point, that not even worth mentioning. So we're going to keep talking with those folks. We're going to keep supporting the Srcful team
Yep.
as they sort of have these conversations, and then it's all business as usual on
Okay.
every other thing that we're trying to push for. So a lot going on the IoT side. I don't think I've caught up with you since Germany, have I?
No, I don't think you have. It's been because I think I missed last week. I was in the UK and I just didn't run it. And there's also maybe the Helium community call, so I got the kind of the pass, the once a month
Yeah,
pass. So yeah, what's
yeah,
been going on
yeah,
since you came back? I got some
uh,
IoT stuff to talk about. What do you got?
yeah. Well, I mean, unfortunately, with the like board of directors stuff, there's not a lot that I'm allowed to talk about.
You're
But
so fancy now.
the it's yeah, it's a interesting experience to say the least. But
Good.
we went in there. Helium IoT network has seen growth, but we've seen growth at the rate of the overall LoRaWAN market. So like it's become really clear that the gating factor here is just more people leveraging LoRaWAN. And
Mm-hmm.
so the targets are sort of sighted in on the LoRa lines, like we're poking them with a stick to like do something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, in these board meetings, it threw out a number of sort of hot takes, to say like, this is what needs to happen for this thing to really take off. We've got, everyone knows what Thread is for the most part in the smart home space.
Mm-hmm.
Matter, I should say Matter. Thread is probably a secondary
I
to
was gonna
that.
say not everyone. What's Thread? I think I've seen it, but I haven't used it.
It's I probably couldn't even tell you accurately, but
So if
it's
everyone is supposed to know,
smart home
but the
stuff.
two of us
Yeah,
don't know, Joey. Something's not going
yeah.
right with the messaging there.
I'm not getting much sleep these days, so
No.
they cut me some slack.
Yeah,
Um,
fair.
but it, to the
Sorry.
mat, like these are household names, more or
Yeah.
less. Like
Yeah.
you've
Yeah. Yeah.
seen some Matter branded product on
Yep.
Amazon or whatever.
Yep.
You know what Bluetooth is, you know what Wi-Fi is, your phone is LTE or whatever. And so there's a really, really big gap here. And after coming back from the LoRa Alliance meet, we were in Santa Clara for Sensors Converge, and we were sharing a booth with Embedded Works and Andy and his team there, and just awesome folks. Um, and we had, CodePoint had a booth there, and Zong comes up to me. He's just like, "Why don't I have LoRaWAN swag at my booth?" And I was like, "That's actually a really great point. Like, why isn't there like just a pile of stickers or something like that? This guy builds his entire business on top of LoRa and LoRaWAN. And I went and looked, and there's like a dozen companies at this event that are member companies of the LoRa Alliance. It's like, this is a huge missed opportunity. We could have absolutely dominated Sensors Converge with LoRaWAN stickers.
Yep.
And you would have immediately started to solve that, like, what is LoRaWAN question?
Yep.
Which, you know, I'm still answering every time somebody comes by the booth. So, you know, some of those things, it's just like, that's really low-hanging fruit. And then there's, you know, much more sort of like strategic, you know, organizational change stuff that I think we'll have some announcements that'll roll out eventually there. So a lot of stuff happening on the LoRa Alliance side of things.
I'll tell you, on
I'm
my
happy to be
end,
a part
Joey,
of that.
running MetSci, the Medio Scientific Console, is I'm seeing consistent usage, and I would say it's slow. It's nothing that's like, okay, this is, you know, we're going to be buying 6 new warehouses soon. That is not happening on the MetSci side. But there are people who are interested, and I get emails a couple times a week with like, hey, how do I do this? And a lot of it is we just don't have great documentation. I frankly haven't made a ton of time to document stuff beyond the initial run of videos I did. But I'm getting a lot of questions about, and we've talked about this before, where is it, right? The Busy Light is, it's not a stand-in. It is a Class C device, but I've got a couple questions in the last week or two, like, hey, how do I integrate a Class C device with, I think it's DataCake. Like, how do I get whatever it is on there? And it's like, oh, I don't think I haven't done that, because we were running for a long time app.medioscientific.com. We just shut that down a month ago. I was like, I just don't have time for that. There wasn't enough usage on it. But places like DataCake do have that. I mean, that's what they were competitors. And I think that's a great example of like, we didn't fail fast enough, right? But we failed, and it's like, okay, if things don't work, don't keep doing them. Like, let someone else do them and then go do the things you're super good at. But I've been meaning to shoot a video for like, hey, here's how to use Class C and integrate it over into DataCake. So I'm seeing kind of consistent, what I'm saying is I'm seeing consistent interest in LoRaWAN from pretty normal people who are having the same issues that I had when I first came into it. Like, how do I connect all these dots?
Yeah. I mean, it's great to hear, like, that's a solvable problem, right?
Yeah.
Education is like the thing that's going to make this all move forward. So like getting that interest that's the hard part.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And then it just makes me think like, oh, there's a bunch of other, I don't know, projects and videos that I could shoot to help people understand this stuff and maybe improve the documentation. I've wanted to do a DocuSource thing for a long time. It's just like, all right, I need 8 days in the week instead of 7. I put in my my request to the Universal Power for that. Nothing's come through yet, so I gotta make my time more efficient.
Yeah, I know how that goes. It's you know, I've been showing off some stuff when I was in Germany around documentation too. And I think I've mentioned this on this call back when we were talking about like the educational LNS. You know, there's this opportunity to start plugging in, you know, interactive documentation and stuff like that. And we actually have that built now, which is really exciting. And I just need to get in there and like write the actual content around it. But you can go to our staging docs and press a button and provision a device on Helium, and then put those device keys into some sample code and run them on a physical device. As you can sort of see sort of all of these various steps. It's not Class C yet, but those kind of opportunities exist, which is a really exciting thing. And like, I want to be able to, you know, take that stuff and push people to Medio Scientific or, you know, Disk 91 stuff or whatever that ends up being.
Yeah. And I think there's a pretty clear, now there's like a more clear kind of business segmentation case, is that if you're going to, you know, onboard 1,000 or 10,000 devices, use Disk 91, right? Like if your thing is you are actually running like a big business or a bigger business, use him, go direct with him. If you're not, and you're still in that kind of fuck around mode, or you're just like, oh, I'm going to try this thing out and I want to do more than just 1 or 2, use Medio Scientific. It's going to be more expensive, but there's no restrictions. You don't have to ask anyone's permission. You don't have to set up a long-term contract with Paul. You can kind of come in, come out as you want. I think that's actually a pretty nice way to do it and say, these are the levels of commitment or entry that you come into.
I'm just like, Paul is on it. I think we were DMing you from Germany. Like, he just whipped out his laptop and we debugged a thing right there.
Yeah.
We're like, hey, Nick,
he's
we just added some data credits on here. Like, don't worry about it. But yeah, I mean, I have a friend that is the CEO of a company that is doing some energy efficiency stuff, and they don't want to be sort of named yet. Like they're still just kind of getting their feet wet. But I onboarded them to 𝐒𝐻𝐸𝐵𝑒𝑚, and they did one device. They sent it out to the city where they were working in, and it worked, and they're excited about it. Um,
Cool.
and now they are ordering like more Dragino, devices to, put them in different cities, and it's
Yeah.
so cool to be able to like say like, yeah, it looks like you should have coverage there. Go throw them out there, and then you look at the payloads, and you're getting like 3 hotspots, and it's just, coverage is good
The
in,
thing
in
is
those
working.
places. Things working.
The
Yeah.
thing's working. That's cool. Super cool. Let's see what else. Other kind of nerd talk stuff. So I don't. Did you ever set up a Wingbits thing, or you haven't had time yet?
No, I've done ADSB, but I haven't gone on
Not
the
Wingbits
Wingbit side yet.
specific. Okay. So this is just the whole state of the networks, because I know we talk a lot about helium because that's super fun.
Yeah.
I set up another Wingbits, whatever deployment. And in fact, what I did was I replaced, the one I had, which was a very basic one. Like when I'd first gotten into it and I was looking around, it's like, oh, buy this antenna, buy that thing, buy whatever. Bought it all, set it up, and it worked out of the box pretty easy. But then it's like I have this, it's not a sickness, it's not a disease, it's just like this pursuit of excellence thing. It's like, if this thing is good, but I could be better, I would like to do the thing that's better. And so I went out and got a super nice antenna from DPD Antenna. I got a really nice cavity filter from this guy. What a great name, Lothar of the Hills. I think he's out of Hawaii.
Wow.
Bought a cavity filter of him that's equivalent to the 𝐒𝐸𝐴𝐸 that I'd put up initially, and then got an 𝐒𝐸𝐴𝐸, which is supposed to be a pretty nice receiver, and put those up. And I don't know if it doubled the rewards, but it was
Wow.
certainly more than before. And that was just super fun to do. It's super fun to get back into like this, let's say right around 1,000 MHz game of radio. And it's like, oh yeah, how do you do this? You get the thing up high, you put in pretty nice equipment, and that seems to make a difference. And it's just fun to have seen that. I think there's still room for me to get into the 𝐒𝐸𝐴𝐸 settings and say like, okay, here's why I want to tone this down or tone the gain down or tune this or do that. So
Yeah. Well, I got to get you go take a look at my roof setup. I'm probably missing RF performance stuff in my whole rig too.
yeah,
I follow the basic rules of keep the cable short and use a big antenna, and try
it's not rocket surgery.
keep it
No.
keep it clear, but
And get it
yeah,
high. Yeah. I think those, I mean,
yeah.
those are the basic rules. Get it high, use it. And I think with helium, this is an interesting thing. The antenna didn't really matter with helium. That's what I found. Because I was buying, God, I figured like $1,300 crazy, maybe they weren't that much. Maybe they're $700, but like the giant cell antennas that are like 4 feet high and they're directional.
Right. Yeah.
And I, blast out whatever, 100 and some odd miles. And then I used the little 3 dBi, not multipath, multipolar one from H Antenna that was all the hotness, and that worked just as well as the $700 one that was $150. And I'll bet you anything, if I would have used, Max's People Antenna, which was like the rebadged $5 whatever, it would have worked the same. Like the antennas didn't really matter in helium. What mattered was, as you said, cable short and up nice and high. Once you get those things right, everything else is just farting around. I think in Wingbits it actually matters a little bit more, because you're actually, instead of going to another hotspot, which is what the initial rewards in helium that drew so many people in were all about, you're actually doing something from a sending device, in this case airplanes in the sky. So the more you can pick up, the better. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been fun. I missed seeing Rob and Nosmaster and Waveform in the UK. We just couldn't coordinate our schedules, but I did manage to get a couple of field test devices off to my buddy T Miklas. So he should have a couple of those in hand and be able to muck about with those. I think I sent them on Monday, and it was like 3-day post for, it was like £4, which is what, $6 or something.
That's the hack, is you got to send it from within Europe.
Yeah.
I muled a bunch of gateways over to the LoRa Alliance thing because some folks needed them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's neat to be able to hand those out, because those were initially ones that I got on the Helium in the Wild tour, and they'd sat on my desk forever, and I was like, I don't know what to do with these. And I was like, oh, I see what to do with these now. I was like, hand them out, get them into the hands of people, let them use them, let them do their thing.
It was these guys, right?
Yeah. Yep. Totally.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. He was like, hey, these were set to 868. Did you ever use them there? I was like, as a matter of fact, I did. We used them for that Here Be Dragons event, where you're like going around and mapping as much as you could in London.
That's pretty nice firmware on the. I think Paul made this stuff too, didn't he?
I think
Or
so.
is
Yeah.
this somebody at Rack? I can't remember. But yeah, you can like configure the region like in software. It's all pretty nicely done.
Yeah. And I think it's now open, and you can also reflash those to be Meshtastic nodes, which is why I wanted to send Nicholas a couple, is to make sure
Cool.
you
Have you played around with Meshtastic much?
It's the thing that got me into Helium, funnily enough.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. When it was
So
super new,
early
it was this thing.
Meshtastic.
Yeah, it was invented or discovered or developed or whatever by a paraglider for paragliders. That was the whole thing. And so that was
Oh,
when I
that
was.
explains all of the like directionality. Like, okay, yep.
Yep. Yeah, that was the
Gotcha.
thing that I stumbled into Helium, and then there's like, oh, look, there's a Helium hotspot right down the road from my house, basically making my mortgage every month. Like, I wonder if I could do that. As it turns out, you
Nice.
can. So
Look at you now.
yeah. Here we are, 4 years later, something like that. Or coming up on 4 years later. It'll be 4 years in August. So
Wow. Yeah.
yeah,
Time flies.
so that's cool. Let's see. I've made some mistakes on my home network, and there is a rogue DHP server in there, which I don't understand how to find that, how to fix that, how to do it. So I'm just going to wipe the whole network. I'm going to start a bunch of new VLANs. Like, I'm going to do the whole thing over again, because I also had this problem with this monster AI thing in the back. What's up, Zim? That it was coming online and it had 2 local IP addresses, and I don't know why it had 2. So it's like, in my world of networking and these AI magic machines, there's a ton of like discovering things to do.
Yeah.
So
Now, 2 IP addresses. I guess like 2 interfaces or I don't know. I don't do Windows stuff anymore. You're running Windows on that thing, right? So
no, I'm running what's it called? I think it's called Pop OS. So I
is this some
looked
Linux
around.
distro?
It's some Linux thing. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So Joey, what's up with this more tokens announcement? And am I going to get a rack dashboard? 619 has been on this dashboard thing forever.
Rack dashboard. We'll see. Well, we're talking to Jose. Maybe. I'm not sure how they're going to manage the multi-firmware for this just quite yet. We're kind of figuring out the right approach there. Like, this could be something. So, energy network, all this stuff. We want to do multi-mining on the existing gateways because their client is light enough and it uses the same hardware. Like, it's just a good fit.
Why not? Yeah, for sure. And that
but,
was like BFG Neil's thing since the beginning. It was like, hey, you should be able to multi-mine on any of these things, because Raspberry Pi doesn't need its full capacity to do Helium.
Yep, and like we really stand by that from like the foundation perspective. Like, 𝐒𝐻𝐸 is really big on the right to repair.
Yep.
Do whatever you want with this little box that you bought. Like, we don't own that. The network doesn't own that. Like, yeah, it's your box.
You keep it clean.
Yeah, so all of the standard, you break it, you buy it kind of thing, whatever. But like in trying to think about how this energy network scales, like, it's this really great opportunity to leverage all this other hardware. But is this a flash an SD card and go plug that in? Is it a over-the-air thing? Is there some magic that we can do in the wallet app that says go install this client? The last thing we would ever do is just go like load this on everyone's gateway. Like, that's not the right approach here, unless it was like sitting there dormant and then you had to like activate it or something. I don't know. So there's a lot of stuff to figure out there.
You're getting requests to leak information. Leak something about this. I think he already did, Zim. But for leaking stuff, we really need to get Amir on here, because he's the worst about keeping secrets.
Oh, we had some leaks. If you want the leaks, you got to get on Twitter. That's where we tend to not be able to constrain ourselves, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah. For those that haven't heard, the new subnetwork proposal for Helium is this company Srcful wants to build effectively virtual power plant platform, leveraging the community. So anyone who has
Srcful, I think that's what it is, like .io or .com or something.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so like, as a sort of analogous comparison here, this is effectively like Nova Labs building the mobile network. Like Srcful is going to build the energy network.
Okay.
And then the Helium Foundation is going to continue to manage the protocol, able to do the all of the sort of fun stuff that we do, Wallet App Explorer, all that, all that good stuff. Uh, Manufacturer relations, all that, but effectively what this network will do is it'll have the ability to connect to residential solar. So via the inverter, which communicates over the local network and sends out a bunch of data, this gateway can collect all of that data, which is in and of itself a valuable asset when we're talking to energy companies. And then it will also have the ability to send commands to that inverter. And so now that becomes very valuable for grid balancing. And so you can actually tell a solar system to emit a bit less power.
It's like self-combust now.
Yeah, not that. But
initiate meltdown sequence.
Yeah. Don't no nuclear.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if there's a really helpful website. I'm going to drop this in our chat here, Nick. But this is effectively a peek into all of the various grids in the United States. And there's platforms like this for Europe and various other places. The Srcful team is based out of Sweden, so they're focusing on markets there. That's actually an exciting aspect for this subnetwork, because it's not a US based thing. Like there's a Europe first subnetwork being built.
I thought America was the center of everything, Joey. That's
yeah. Well,
this is what I've been told.
Not when it comes to renewable energy, it seems. But
should we? We probably shouldn't. But did you see the debates on Thursday?
Oh, are we talking the presidential debates?
The presidential debate. Oh, what a disaster! All right, we should probably talk about IoT stuff. But I was like, Lee and I watched that in England. I got up in the Twitter feeds full of memes about it. I was like, surely it can't be that bad. And then I watched it. I was like,
oof, yeah.
Yeah, I got a lot of questions about that at the wedding party. They're like, "Hey, how do you feel about this?" It's a rough
state of affairs. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's the difference between Srcful and BitHarvest, Crank, etc.?
I don't think BitHarvest, Crank, etc. are doing anything with VPPs. I mean, I could be wrong there, but there are other VPP projects out there.
Yeah.
But I think the model that we've painted, there's a big hit. Like you have to read the thing. There's a lot of detail in there. I can only summarize as much as I can. But the synergies to the IoT network and maybe even the mobile network in sort of leveraging this already connected hardware to do sort of this just small additional job that has these cascading effects to controlling sort of massive amounts of controllable power on the grid becomes a really, really, really valuable asset. These are not entities that are currently controllable or even sometimes visible by these grid operators. And so this effectively, the pitch that Fredrik gave me when I first met him in person was just like, we are trying to make solar work. We're trying to make renewable energy work. And I think they are really actually on the right track to make that a reality sort of through this model. And we're going to have more AMAs on this. Like this is obviously it's going to be a big deal. Subnetwork edition is a big deal. And so we'll, try to make everyone available as much as we can to support this conversation. I could actually probably drag Fredrik over here if you want to throw him on stage. But
let's chuck him in at least today, next week, whenever. But totally love to have him on.
Let me shoot him a DM, see if he wants to join.
Cool. And I think you've got the invite link, so you can bring him in, and I'll figure out how to do that if he does. Let's see what else. I got off the phone. I talked to the Threefold guys. The cloud stuff they're doing is super cool, and I think it's really exciting on my side to see something complicated that I don't understand how it works and why it's better. But as they're walking me through it, it's like, oh, some of the stuff they're doing is rad. And some of like the rendering in the cloud it's producing like amazing stuff for like video quality walkthroughs of stuff with current
This is a
GPUs.
is this like a render platform?
Distributed compute, distributed storage, distributed kind of everything. So it's these guys, they made a boatload of money building internet 1.0 and building basically like the cloud as we know it. And they sold all those companies off that they built. Those are, used to run the cloud now. And they're like, that didn't work out the way that we wanted to, as far as making sure that kind of the people held power and that this was a decentralized piece. And so as they went through Internet 2.0 and seeing now the Web3, they're like, oh, this is the way to do what we originally intended to do. And because they have the chops to do that, they've been doing this for decades and not just a couple of years. Every time they do a demo to bigger businesses, not like me or you, but they're like actual giant businesses. Those businesses are like, holy shit, this is super cool. We want in. So kind of neat to see that happening, and see kind of a little bit behind the curtains on them.
Yeah, and that's what is that called?
Threefold. Yeah,
Threefold.
threefold.io, I think it is. I don't think it is. I know it is. And then that's going to be, I don't know if they've talked about the next piece I think they have, but the Inca, the internet capacity project is where that'll go. But I just look at Threefold for now. So that's super cool. Yeah. Working on the 𝐒𝐻𝐸𝐻 stuff. I think that's been super fun as well with Max, is seeing like, okay, we learned a bunch in our first foray into GNSS, and now we can do the kind of things that we wanted to do initially. We can do them better with this one as well. So that's
awesome.
really cool. I saw that WeatherXM is good.
The 𝐒𝐻𝐸𝐻 team, like, sign me up. I need to buy some of their hardware and like get that on my roof.
Yeah, I think that's the prices seem about the same between 𝐒𝐻𝐸𝐻 and competitors as far as like how much you're going to be in for doing it. But they're also looking at like, hey, they've got all these connections in that industry already. Like, let's get those folks to fire up their stations and just switch them over to 𝐒𝐻𝐸𝐻 and use that. I think that's a pretty persuasive piece that they've got. And they are going to be much more strict with the quality of information coming in. And I think this is always going to be the balance with all of these DePIN projects, because you're basically putting super high technology in the hands of normal people. And sometimes it'll just work. Like with helium in general, it works more or less. Although what I'm expecting to see at some point in the future is that, much like WingBits, you'll start to, and this is all hand wavy bullshit, right? So this is not exactly what's going to happen, but you'll start to see nodes be rewarded for the quality of coverage they're providing versus like the broad proxy for quality that is connecting to other hotspots. So that's again, a bunch of hand wavy bullshit. I don't know that there's a ton going on there, but I think with all of these projects, you'll see this one set of incentives at the beginning that is to grow the network, just like raw, flat out, massive growth. And then that will switch over time to be, okay, now that we've got the network built, let's start to really hone in on the quality of coverage, or really the quality of the data stream that the network is providing to the competitive market.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So yeah, that's kind of cool there. What else? I just talked to the WeatherXM folks. Those guys are going to be cranking over the summer. It's always good to talk to those guys. They're constantly pushing out updates, which is funny for those of us with, not funny. It's nice for me with the helium station, because it gives me a reason to go out into the hills and, update my station, because you got to be there to do it. You can't do it over helium. There's just not enough bandwidth.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. It just gives me an excuse to be like, hey, I've got to go do this thing. Yeah. And there is a dual mining thing with GNSS. I think there might be like 3 things to mine. Who's the guy? My man Simeon on security has a way to triple or quad or quintuple or whatever, the septuple, mine these things. I've never been really that into doing the same thing across a bunch of pieces, like a bunch, like trying to do the LoRaWAN thing on the same machine for 10 different projects. Just like, I'm just going to leave that to helium. I'm not sure that the multi-mining thing in the same ecosystem is that appetizing for me, but
yeah,
for others it's pretty good.
It's like, you don't want your peas and carrots touching.
It's like separation. Yeah. No peas, no peas touching, no carrots. What else have I seen and paid attention to? I think every time I go to Europe, the thing is just like they do this contactless payments piece, which is like, it's a little bit off, but you use your phone for everything, and when you pull out your card, they're like, oh, you must be American.
I love it. Although in Germany, they've got a little bit of a greater passion for cash payments. I've found. So
Huh.
I got caught a couple of times where I was like, I don't know, like I had €3 on me. I'm not gonna buy a
Oh,
sandwich.
dude,
Sorry.
I got two stories at least. We're driving through England, following whatever the Google Maps thing, and we come into this town, Bath, which is an ancient, I think initially Roman town, and probably some other town before that. You have to pay cash to cross a toll booth there, which
Oh,
is a
amazing.
bridge that one dude owns. He's like, yeah, this
Uh-huh.
is my bridge. It's been my family for years and years. It
Yeah.
costs you £1. You will drop your pound because it's basically a dollar coin into the basket, and that's how you
Mhm.
cross the bridge.
Yep. Yep.
Like, Jesus, in this land where everything else is contactless payment and on your phone and the rest of it, here you have this dude who's like, yep, this is my bridge. You want to cross it?
That
You pay
that's
a pound.
truly like the American mind cannot comprehend somebody just owning a bridge.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
That was super funny. And then otherwise, I had some problems with contactless because I couldn't get like my default card to not work. Like I had problems switching my card, but that's my issue, not figuring that out. And then I had this fantastic experience with my sister married into this family that you could only call kind of upper class English, right? We don't really have a class system here in the US, but they certainly have one there. And they have these,
Hmm.
they're awesome people. Like I love them. I'm not saying this in any disrespectful way. Like they're exactly what you'd think of as like upper class aristocrat English people being. And so I go into the wedding party. My sister said, hey, you have to dress nice. You've got to wear a tie. You've got to do this stuff. I'm like, no, I'll show up in a collared shirt. That's as far as I go. So I walk into the wedding party, and there's some folks on her family side, and they are very properly dressed, suit, tie, handkerchief,
Mm.
like coiffed, like looking as you'd expect the English aristocratic class to look. And
Yeah.
it's not like she married a prince. It's just that's the family. And I walk up to these three old guys who are clearly in that family, and I said, "Hey, I'm Nick." And the guy looks me up and down, just looks at my hair, looks at my non-tie, no jacket, no handkerchief coming out of my pocket, and he goes, "You're not British, are you?" Like, as a matter of fact, I am not.
I'm remembering Ace Ventura, Pet Detective,
Yeah,
and the Monopoly guy or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
You're basically the Ace Ventura of the party.
Yeah, yeah, it was super funny to be a
Yeah.
part of that, and then they all turned out to be super cool. We're laughing about whatever they'd done. They all turned out to be like, I don't know, British Army or something. So we're laughing about a bunch of stuff there.
Hmm.
But,
That's
yeah,
universal. That's a good connection. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm seeing guys talk about their 4th of July plans. I guess the 4th of July is tomorrow. Happy birthday, America! A day in advance.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if you got any plans. I know we had a couple calls that we just said actually we're not going to do calls on the 4th, so I asked them to reschedule, and they have. So that's been good.
Yeah. I'm in the same boat. I managed, I think, clear the calendar of calls, but
Yeah, I
I'm
might have
gonna
one or two things. I know we're gonna go work the shop at Paley Treats because that's always fun to be in there.
cool. Yeah.
And then I'll get
Well,
Frodobots up and running. Frodobots did a competition, or they're doing competition that I just haven't had time to mess around with. And those guys have been super good about saying, "Hey, we launched this hardware thing with the hardware not finished." We were pretty clear about that with folks when they bought it. Like they had the pictures of like this is what it looks like. It is not like this polished, beautiful option piece.
mhm.
And the hardware broke or it didn't work or it would pull to one side or the other. And they've been super good about saying, hey, we'll just send you a new one.
Hmm.
And I think it's a really interesting aspect of when you start these projects and you're like, hey, I'm trying to get the cost down. I think the robots sell for $200 a piece plus shipping, which is probably $100 per robot, so 300. Is that as a company, and maybe they just have a bunch of money, but they're just like, yeah, we're just going to replace it. It's not like a $10,000 thing that we can't afford to replace. Until we have a better solution, we're just going to replace it. It's been super cool to see that level of customer service on that side,
Smart.
which is very different than others.
Yeah. In the long term, like it's going to cost you so much less to like have a happy customer than like, hiring an extra support person or like telling somebody to like disassemble a motor. You just like give them a bad time, they're out. But
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Yep. That's been
it's
cool to
really
see.
smart.
And then I'm trying to think of what else has been going on. I think mostly it's IoT stuff. The one thing I'd like to see is I did all those water or the soil moisture sensors a while ago, and I had that 3D printed enclosure design, and that was super fun. But I think all of the ones I've had out have failed by now, which is a year into it. Some of those are battery issues. Some of those just kind of delammed. And I was talking with Zim the other day, and he was like, hey, those actually, they're fun as far as like an entry-level piece into LoRaWAN. But they're not actually that good. They'll delaminate. They won't measure the soil below about whatever it is, 4 inches or whatever it is. And you need to measure the soil at different levels. And so that's been super interesting to think about. Okay, how do you transition people from the initial piece that they use to what they're going to use when they actually make the network work for them and figure out how they do it.
Right. You were using those outside, right? Yeah. So those are probably great for like a house plant.
Yeah. And I had a couple inside. I've got to go see what I did with them. And then the other thing that I saw that was, and maybe this is just me being like a non-tech dude, but you pick it up and you can't look at it and say like, hey, this is unit 2 alpha 7, and then go back into console and be like, let me check on unit 2 alpha 7. So you've got to, like, there's no external label on the thing unless you go in there and write on the cap, which we designed like these pure white caps so that the solar, the temperature off the sun wouldn't influence the temperature on the stick. So, cause white reflects. Right. And I just didn't want to besmirch them by writing in like black Sharpie on the side of it or on the top
affecting
of it.
Your temperatures with it. Yeah.
So I'd like to figure out a way to be able to look at the thing and be like, yeah, that's 2 alpha 7. Let me go check that thing.
Right. I mean, it would be so cool too, to like take effectively this consumer level thing. The beauty of it was so cheap. You could buy a couple of them. The commercial grade ones are like the 3-prong with the fully epoxy, like stainless steel thing. But those are like $100.
Yeah. I think Zim dropped some links to ones that are like $300. He's like, this is what you need to use if you're serious. If you're kind of growing for profit.
Yep. Yeah. If you're trying to like get your soil moisture a foot down, like all that kind of stuff, you have to be thinking about different stuff. But yeah, any problem like that, like we see these projects, it's like, oh, we built a microscope out of like Coke bottles, and now we've like, given people access to microscopy.
Nice.
That kind of opportunity exists for a lot of these things. Obviously we're doing our big like hand waving like we like to do on here, but some stainless steel and a little jig, lay those things out. I'm looking back here because I know I've got one laying around somewhere.
I think we talked about this. I found some plans on the internet. Of course, this is like how all these projects start. Found some plans on the internet for a 4-foot soil probe with different moisture sensors at different depths, and I'd been meaning to build that, and of course it just went into the like list of 600 projects, and now it's somewhere around 492 or something.
Right. Yeah. How that goes. It looks like Fredrik says he may be able to jump in here so we can quiz him a little bit about
Let's see if I
energy
can figure
networks.
Out a third. I haven't done this in so long, Joey. Shit. How do I do this?
This is actually his public debut post.
Is it? How do I add an extra? Oh, I do one of these. There we go. Okay, so whenever he comes in, I can make ours smaller. And then he's going to come in here in a second, is what you're thinking?
Yep. Yeah, he just messaged me. So.
All right, and then we'll do this. There he is. This is not 𝐒𝐩𝐸𝐬𝐫𝐬𝐡𝐢𝐻, but we'll figure that out in a second. And then I will choose Fredrik. What's going on, dog?
There he is.
Hey! Nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you as well. Talk me through Srcful.
Jumped in here on request by Joey, so.
Yeah. No, talk me through Srcful. I'll put up a little tag to it that will be incorrect at first because it's for something else. But I'll fix that. And in the meantime, what are you doing? What's going on with this new sub-DAO?
Yeah, it's been a long day. We started, I would say in European time early this morning, releasing the HIP, which we actually been working on for quite some time. So I would say that even though we see that there are a lot of questions from the community, a lot of these things will need to be sorted out, but I think that most are actually just about education at the moment. That's what I believe. So it's been a long day, and we also have an AMA in just about an hour or so in the Discord, in the Helium Discord community. So
super cool.
Yeah, and for us, this is, I would say, perfect. I mean, we've been waiting so long for this release. We've been a couple of insiders and us, of course, that have been building this thing, that have known about this. So just being able to tell everyone that, yeah, we are now joining in and trying to be a sub-DAO of Helium, that's great. So
it's nice when you can finally let the cat out of the bag. Like, all right, now I can talk about this with everybody. I don't have to worry about like, hey, don't say anything to this guy. Super cool. So, and it's all solar energy stuff, and then managing and monitoring how much energy is being produced and sent to the grid. Yeah, that's the game.
More or less it. Yeah. There are a lot of different dimensions on I would say what we're doing, but obviously it's all about energy. And what I can say that I think that the would say the biggest part with the monetary part, I would say, is the virtual power plant.
Yeah.
And it is a challenge to explain this to people that haven't been into this. Like, try to explain to someone how the 𝐒𝐻ERP, like what is a 𝐒𝐻ERP in LoRaWAN? Like you have to start somewhere. You need to start with, like, you understand what the radio is, and like, so, and I would say that that's a challenge that we do have, because I think the general perception of energy and electricity is that you pay your utility bill. You know that you're using this amount of energy, and then you produce energy, and you can grasp that, I'm selling my excess energy. But that's not what the virtual power plant is. The virtual power plant is being able to control the amount of energy, like the power in the system. It's a balance game. So, like, I think I used the analogy some time ago of, like, let's say that you're driving your car and you want to keep a steady pace, like you want to keep driving at 60 miles per hour or whatever speed you want.
Yeah, you can say 100 kilometers an hour. That's okay. We'll translate.
If you push the throttle too hard, you will go faster, and if it's too slow, you will go slower. So you need to sort of balance this. If there is a hill, you will need to push it a little bit more and less when you go downhill. And sort of the same way the grid works. This is a very much simplified, but then you have the frequency instead. And obviously, it's loads of more complexity than just driving a car. But it's a balance thing. If you want to keep something steady, you need to have a balance in both power and production, and that's just like first engineering principles. So essentially, that's what we're trying to sort of help to solve.
Yeah, it's kind of like a car with 20 accelerators and 20 pedals, and some of them only go down a little bit, some of them go down a lot. Yeah.
And then you have the weather, which also makes it unpredictable by nature. So
but it also sounds like a good fit for this whole idea of a decentralized physical infrastructure network. Like that's almost a match made in heaven. Is that, sure, it's super complicated, you're going to need a bunch of brainiacs working on it, there's some real kind of nerd work to do there, but at the same time, maybe there's no other way to do it in a way that is kind of executable at the rate and scale and scope you guys are going to do it at. So pretty exciting.
Yeah, and also there's a lot of things that we just take for granted. Like we still, like, if we take the car example, that not that many people understand how a car engine works. They need to refuel the car. They need to go to the shop when something is not working. And the same thing with LoRaWAN, IoT, and mobile. Yeah, you can use your mobile device or IoT device. You don't necessarily need to work like on all the technical details. So sometimes we're making it a little bit harder when we try to go into the technical details.
Sure.
Obviously, we need to understand them, but it's about balance. That's about it. And there is a market. So the market already exists. So that's the cool thing. We are not inventing any new market. The market is already validated. There are already traditional businesses that are operating on this market, the same way as there are traditional business operating on the IoT market and obviously cellular. So this is just sort of making it easier for a lot of smaller decentralized resources to take part of the market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. You're opening up participation. That's important.
Yeah.
I'll say two things here. One is this is hard stuff to understand. So like, do bear with these guys as they explain things, and they're going to do their best, and they're probably going to put way more energy into it than they even should. I think Tobias has been in that channel for 10 hours.
Yeah.
Like, he should probably go take a break or something. But it took me so when I was in Sweden, I was talking with these guys and kind of learning about the thing. And it took me a couple of days of, getting the basics down, kind of refreshing my previous knowledge of how energy works, and learning a lot of stuff that I just really didn't know before about how these markets are interconnected. And then what was the other thing? I dropped this link in the guest chat here, Nick, which is grid status. This is the US grids, but I think does a really good job of helping to visualize a little bit of what's going on under the hood. There's a lot of aspects to this and sort of how these things get balanced, but it's a good way to start gaining some local familiarity for the US folks. I'm sure Fredrik knows all of the resources for the European market. It's an exciting thing to sort of be jumping into and getting a new familiarity with.
Yeah. So, Fredrik, I've always thought of energy as just like this big amount of water sloshing around a system, and it goes into little pipes, and then it leaks out into homes, and that's how they get their energy. And if you have too much water sloshing around, it creates problems. If you have too little water sloshing around, it creates problems. Is that a reasonable way to think about it for like a normal person, or do you think there are significant issues with that analogy?
It doesn't hold. So that's one thing.
Okay, so no, not a good way to think of it.
But I would say that if you want, the analogy with water and we have a friction loss in the pipes, and if you sort of take the same analogy, I'm trying to think here, it doesn't really work like that.
Okay.
You could simplify it. Everything can be simplified, of course.
Sure.
But that is if you just look at it from one dimension. If you just look at it from the energy level, like, okay, if you have a water bucket, you're going to fill up your water bucket. That should be the amount of energy, and the flow rate would be the power. So let's say that let's continue on the water analogy, because we can still continue on that one. Let's say that if you're going to fill a glass of water, or if you're going to take a shower, or whatever you're going to do, which is like dependent on water, it won't work if you don't have the exact flow rate. So you won't be able to put on the shower if you don't have like whatever liters or gallons per minute. You will sort of go into your shower and there will be no water,
Right.
because you need the exact amount.
Yep.
So the pumping station, they need to be able at every single time see that the pump works at the speed. So it's sort of accompanied, like everyone gets the exact amount. So when you stop taking your shower, they need to instantly sort of lower the pump speed, so it's the same. Then the water analogy works, but that's not really how we utilize water, because we are sort of just interested in the amount of water. Obviously, we don't want it to go like the flow rate is important. And I mean, if everyone sort of fills their pool or something, it will be slower for everyone.
Yep.
But it will still be water coming out of the pipes. That wouldn't be the case for electricity. Because if we go under a certain frequency and voltage drops, you will have circuit breakers that will just break. It will be a blackout. And electrical equipment doesn't also work if they are not within the boundaries where they were designed.
Okay. So you with water, you can take a shitty shower with a couple drops coming out and you're like, oh, there's not enough, but there's still something. And with electricity, it's like either there is what you need or there's not. It's more of like a flipping switch.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So in some sense, you could say like you can always make analogies, and I think the water analogy and the electricity analogy, it's a very common one when you learn about electricity.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really work like that. And also
Right.
you have AC and you have DC, and AC is also making things more complicated because you have the frequency. Like DC is perhaps easier, but well, we don't have DC, we have AC. So
Yeah. Tesla
Yeah.
got overruled in that one. More's the
Yeah.
pity, maybe. Okay. Cool. What, dude? So I don't want to keep you all day. I know you're busy, and actually, you and I are on the same time zone because I just flew back from the UK. We're on a pretty similar time zone, so I'm pretty cooked too.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you're kind of most excited about now, or is it just the fact that, hey, this thing's out in the open, this is cool?
At the moment, I think that we obviously, we're very excited of this is out in the open, and we're super excited of working with the community. This is like the best so far.
Yeah.
We've been like, people have been scrutinizing, and we've been talking about this, but this is on overdrive, hyperspeed. Like, thank you very much for the community, for all the comments and everything, because this really means a lot. But otherwise, I would say that, working with dual mining and actually getting more people on board, we are talking about the best way to sort of create a beta group together with the community for trying out dual mining, maybe even before we go live with the token. That is also very cool. Also, I must mention, I'm actually visiting San Francisco next week, so that's the next thing that will be super, super cool. So me and Tobias will, just in 2 days, fly to San Francisco. That will be
The
super.
grilling will continue until morale improves.
Well, step over all the homeless people and enjoy the otherwise beautiful parts of that city. Super rad, dude. We'll have to have you on Deep in State, and we'll go deeper into Srcful. I've been a part of that Discord for a long time, so it's cool to see it kind of out in the open and crushing. And really appreciate that you made time to come on the show today.
Thank you very much.
Cool. I think that's as good a time as any to wrap it. Joey, thanks for bringing in Fredrik, and I will see you guys next week. Rock and roll, guys.
Sounds great.
All right.
Great.
We're out.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.